Hello and welcome to my third podcast episode on TPRS and the first one that I'm doing as a video podcast. And I'm very excited to be sharing with you this morning a conversation that I just had with my aunt Martha McKay, who is a teacher here in SD 61 in the Victoria area. She teaches Spanish primarily, and she is a practitioner of TPRS. And so I was very excited to learn about her transition from her former teaching methods, more traditional based teaching, into TPRS and comprehensible input based teaching. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, hello and welcome back to another podcast episode. This time I'm very excited to be welcoming Martha. So thanks for joining me today, Martha.
Happy to be here.
So for those that don't know, Martha McKay is my aunt, but she's also someone I've lived with and someone I'm very fortunate to have in as an encourager and as a mentor as I enter into the profession of teaching. And most importantly for this discussion, she's a practitioner of comprehensible input-based teaching, and more specifically, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. So Martha's been someone that's encouraged me and guided me on this inquiry as I've been learning about comprehensible input-based teaching and TPRS, teaching through storytelling. So I'm very excited to welcome you here today, Martha. I've got lots of questions. I'm excited to hear specifically about your transition from your sort of the older way you used to teach and where you're at today, and then finally learning about some of the ways which you would encourage young teachers on how they can learn more about comprehensible input-based teaching.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start it right off with how long have you been teaching now, and what school are you at right now?
Okay, well, currently I'm at Vic High, and I've been at Vic High for the last 14 years teaching Spanish. Most of those years I was teaching part-time, but I'm teaching full-time now, the last 4 years, now that my kids are all grown up. But I started teaching 35 years ago. I've taught French, Spanish, and English as a second language. And I took 9 years out in the middle there to have kids, but basically I guess I've totaled about 26 years in the classroom. So
wow, that's
yeah.
Impressive. That's what we strive for.
Yeah.
That's a full career. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I've been wondering about is what it was like for new teachers when you started in terms of accessing resources. So one of the things I'm navigating through now is what I'm going to have access to when I become a teacher, what I'm going to start off with, what resources I'll use. So I'm wondering what teachers did back then, what it was like for you when you began.
You're going to have way more access to resources than I ever did. Oh my goodness. So basically we had to use what we were given in the school, which was, a textbook, grammar-based textbook at that time. And I had done a bit of traveling, so I had some cassette tapes with music, woohoo! And, I had to make my own worksheets, so did a lot of typing on my manual typewriter with corrector ribbon and such. So it was really tedious to make your classes interesting. It was a lot of work. We couldn't just, find a YouTube video and then search for the lyrics. I can remember sitting for hours listening to a Spanish song and trying to decipher the words so I could type them up to share with my class, So that was my life back then. Resources were hard to come by. But I have to say, every school I taught in did have a good set of textbooks and readers, a few readers. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And so you've now completely converted to comprehensible input teaching, and you use TPRS in your classroom. So I really want you to walk me through what that transition process was like, from what you did before and what you're doing today. So how long did that transition take? Did you start with TPRS right away?
No, I didn't. The seed was planted in about 2011, I think. I had actually taken a course through UBC, a diploma course, learning and teaching through technology from 2009 to 2011, because I loved technology. And so then that kind of opened my mind to new ways of teaching. And I think I was just, my mindset was good and open, and I was ready to look at something else. But well, I wasn't really searching. I was very happy with how my classes were going. And, you know, my kids seemed to enjoy the classes. We played lots of games and it was good. But there was always that nagging feeling that the kids would go through 4 years of Spanish and not be able to speak it at the end and not really be able to write it. And I knew that a lot of what they had was in their short-term memory. You know, I'd tell them there was a test, they'd study for the test, they'd regurgitate what we had done. And then, you know, I felt it was kind of lost. So I knew, and also the other thing is the grammar-based program, when you're teaching grammar and testing grammar, it's good for the kids that are driven, but it doesn't help the kids that maybe have learning disabilities or whatever. So that was always kind of nagging at me, but you know, you carry on. And in 2011 or 2012, I believe, I went to the BCATML conference in Vancouver. So it was the Modern Language Teachers for Modern Language Provincial Conference, annual thing that they have in October. And I went to Michelle Metcalf's workshop or presentation on TPRS. And she had just gotten on board with TPRS and she was completely won over. So Michelle Metcalf is a teacher who teaches in West Vancouver, and she continues to do presentations, wonderful presentations on TPRS. And so I kind of listened and I thought, well, gee, it looks like her kids are really able to write it. They're able to speak it. You know, that's something interesting. But no, I've got my file cabinets full of activity sheets and stuff that I've worked on. You know, it's too much work. So I resisted a little bit. And then, but then something came across my desk, an opportunity for another workshop in 2012. And that was in Vancouver as well. And it was with, I wrote down the name of the person and I can't remember. It was Janice someone. Anyway, I'll look it up after. I've got it here. She taught, she did a demo on TPRS using Swedish. And after one day in her workshop, I was amazed at how much Swedish I understood. And I'm thinking, you know, there's really something to this. So then, so that was 2012. 2013, Chris Stoltz, I don't know if you've come across his name, but he has a blog and he's a teacher in Surrey, I believe. And he's also done several workshops for us here in Victoria on TPRS. He wrote an article in Teachers Magazine, the BC Teachers Magazine, about how TPRS just changed everything for him. So that was in September of 2013. And so I thought, okay, October, I'll go to the conference again. And I listened to Michelle again talk about TPRS, same presentation, thinking, you know, I should really do this.
Your teaching is still, you're still doing the same teaching. So
I'm
it's sort
still
of
doing, although I have
in.
to say that one of the things I learned at this conference with Janice, with the Swedish, was I started to change my questioning techniques. So she would, instead of holding up something and saying, what is this? You hold it up and say, is this a dog or a cat? You know, or is this a dog? Like just changing that, like, and so that really made me look at questioning in a completely different way. So the seeds were planted and I started to make little changes in my classroom at the time. And then I think it was 2013 when Michelle Metcalf said, you know, a little TPRS is better than no TPRS. She said, I think you should go all the way, but even a little bit is better than nothing. And so that made me feel good. So then I did start doing a few stories in my class. Couldn't believe it. You know, it was amazing. And I actually started telling other teachers about it, although I hadn't completely been won over, like I was still using the textbook. Anyway, 2014, sorry to make a long story short, 2014, Blaine Ray was doing a presentation, a workshop, 3-day workshop in Vancouver. So I went to that, and Ken Henderson, who I didn't really know very well, a Spanish teacher at Esquimalt, went as well. And so it was funny, just over the course of the 3 days, I would kind of waver. And 1 minute I'd say, oh yeah, I've got to do this. And then the next, like, nah, too much work, I don't think so. And then, oh yeah. So anyway, Ken and I said to Ken, well, maybe I'll just do a bit of TPRS. And he said, no, Martha, we got to go all in. Like, let's just go all in and let's do this together. So we shared Google Drive folders, and we at this conference workshop, we heard about Adriana Ramirez, who has written curriculum for TPRS, and she had been on board for about 3 years at this time, or maybe 4 years. And so she's a Colombian, so she's from Colombia, and so she's a native speaker of Spanish. So I really trusted her curriculum and her stories that she wrote. And she actually came to my house and delivered the books and went through everything with me. This is in the summer of 2014, right after my workshop with Blaine Ray. And she walked me through step by step what she did in her classroom. And we seem to be on the same wavelength about a lot of things, Adriana and I really like the way she teaches. And so Ken and I took the stories and we went with it. And so I just started with my grade 9s. My grade 11s, I continued with the textbook. And after about a month, it was October, my grade 9s were further ahead than my grade 11s. My grade 9s could speak better, they could read, they could write. So I said, okay, grade 11s, we have to make a change here. I'm going to try this new technique, and we'll do it for 3 weeks, and then you can tell me how you feel. So we did it for 3 weeks, and I said, okay, what do you think? And this one boy, really bright, hardworking, studious boy, said, well, I'm having more fun, and I'm learning more Spanish, but I'm not working as hard. His worry. So I will never forget that. And that just, like, I get goosebumps thinking about that moment. That was my aha moment. Okay, this is it. The kids don't need to do homework. They need to be engaged in the class, and they need to pay attention and have some fun, and they're going to learn, they're going to acquire the language. So it's just been, and ever since then, I've been to lots of workshops. Like, I just don't think you can ever stop. Like, it's just so fun to talk to other teachers that are doing it. And so that's it. It was a slow transition, but once I just bit the bullet, I could not possibly go back. I couldn't. It would be doing a disservice to my students, really.
Absolutely. It's a cool story. And I think what that boy said, it kind of sounds like what he said is that there's that learning language and there's the acquiring language. And, the way he described it, he understands that he's now acquiring language, whereas what he's used to is learning language.
Exactly. And to him, it became effortless, which is what you want. He wasn't realizing that it was happening.
So what difference did it make having Ken with you and doing it at the same time? What was that like? And
that was fantastic. Ken and I spent a lot of time, like, we spent weekends collaborating. I mean, it was a lot of work the first year. It really is a lot of work, because the new stories you're developing, what your tests, your assessments, your activities, the storylines. And I mean, when I first started, I had to write out all the questions I was going to ask the students. I don't do that anymore, but I did. So we both wrote scripts for each story, and we shared vocabulary lists, and every Pro D we worked together. And then we applied for a learning grant through our district together, and we got novels for our classrooms, which was great. So we applied for money for novels. And and from there, that's kind of how the district then heard about this, because we had to do presentations. When you apply for money, you have to show what you've done with the money and talk about the impact it's had on your students. And so fortunately, our district heard about the great things that were going on in our classroom, and really started to support TPRS.
That's fantastic. So you were the first two then in SD 61 that were
we were the pioneers, which is really exciting.
That is cool. So I guess the last thing on this, I just wondered, so what are some of when you first started with those grade 9s at the very beginning, what was your class looking like? What were you doing with them in terms of TPRS strategies and methods? If you can remember back then, what were the first things you began with?
The first thing I began with was probably un chico. There is a boy. I can't, yeah, I think I just went right into the story. I might have, like what I do now when I first start with my absolute beginners is I do persona especial. I do Bryce Hedstrom's special person interviews. And so I just pick a couple of students from the class and I, what is your name? And then I tell the class, oh, class, his name is, it's all in Bryce Hedstrom's website. He explains it all. So I might have done that a little bit, but I don't know if I knew about the persona especial at that time. So I probably just delved right into a story and started the circling and the questions. I had this, I had the script in my hand. I still have it all written out. All the different questions I can possibly ask, how I can circle that one sentence over and over again. Yeah, and it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
By day 9, my students were writing 100 words easily, 100 words easily in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just, it was incredible. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the things I've been learning about is that under the umbrella of comprehensible input, TPRS is just one of many possible strategies. Are there any others that you've found effective other than just TPRS and storytelling?
Absolutely. I use movie talks. I use picture talks. I start the class from the minute somebody walks in, actually that's the first thing I did in grade when I start with the kids is just taking attendance and saying, is so-and-so here? So-and-so is here. So-and-so isn't here. It's just circle those things. So anything, like anyone that walks into my class late is a target and they know it. So they know if they walk into my class late, we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about why they're late. We're going to decide as a class, is that a good excuse or a bad excuse? And we're doing that all in the target language. So basically we've made, fluency, like we're trying to speak the target language as much as possible in the classroom, and I'm making all of that comprehensible. So that's not really a story. I suppose life is a story. So that's not storytelling, but we're just talking about what the happenings in the class. And that's a big thing we do, especially with the more advanced kids.
Yeah, and using the target language is so important. If you had to quantify how much you use Spanish in your Spanish class, what percentage of the class would you roughly say?
Well, I mean, I'd like to say it's 90%, but I don't know if it's that high, to be honest. I think probably I have a class right now of grade 10, 11, 12s, and there are certain things that I just have to make sure my grade 10s, who are sometimes deer in the headlights, I just need to make sure that they understand, and certain, especially, the COVID rules and things like that, the protocol, I'll try to do it in Spanish, and then I'll often either get somebody else to translate or, I'll repeat things like that. But I really, really try to do as much as possible in Spanish.
Awesome. All right. Well, I wanted to just close off with asking, what do you see for the future in BC with teachers taking on TPRS and comprehensible input-based teaching? I know it seems to be gaining some momentum, and how do you see it taking hold even further?
Well, I really hope that it is the way of the future, because it is making so much sense, and it fits in with all the research and language acquisition. So there's no doubt it's the way to go. I'm very grateful to Simon Burgers and Denise Wenner in our district, who got the ball rolling in our district after Ken and I kind of tested it out, and they've given workshops to all the teachers that wanted to in our district. So that's been really good. I just try to spread the word as much as I can, and I welcome anyone into my class to observe. And I hope that, it becomes part of the methods courses and stuff, at least mentioned. And if people can be directed to those experts that know more about it. And I know, go to a workshop. Adriana Ramirez and Michelle Metcalf have workshops. There in 2019, there was the first Canadian National TPRS conference in West Vancouver, and that was great. And unfortunately, last year we didn't have one because of COVID. But the conferences are fabulous, and I would encourage everyone to kind of think about it. And it works. It's magical, and my students love it. Like they absolutely love it.
That's awesome. And I do have
Yeah.
to say, as a teacher candidate going through the program right now, there has been lots of opportunities to where they've put comprehensible input-based teaching in front of us. You know, being invited to that BC ATML and CASALT conference back in October was a perfect introduction to it for me. I got to learn from Martina Becks and Adriana Ramirez and Michelle Metcalf right
Yeah.
off the bat. So that was really exciting for me, and so I'm thankful for being invited into that conference and into that. So that was great.
Yeah, and I don't criticize anyone that doesn't get on board. I think it was a big deal for me. Like it was a really big deal. It was a big leap of faith. And people are busy in their lives, and sometimes it's hard to sort of put aside what they've been doing all these years. But for new teachers coming in, I really, really hope that that's kind of where they're directed.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So any last words of advice, where to begin for new teachers if they want to learn more? Anywhere you recommend going to?
Well, it sounds like your blog is going to be the place to go for all the resources, because you shared your YouTube playlist with me and you've got some great resources there. And I'd say find a teacher in your district that's using comprehensible input effectively, and go observe, because I think most teachers are really happy to share, and having somebody sitting in the back of the classroom is always a pleasure, I think. And you know, look up the conferences, and maybe some of the conferences will be online this year, but they'll still be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I appreciate all the time you've spent with me, allowing me in your classroom. I'm excited to get back into your classroom as long as
Yeah.
hopefully with COVID, everything allows me to do some more observing in your class. I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. It means a lot to have you on this podcast with me, and for all your advice and for all your future
Oh,
help. So thank you so much.
that's great, Stephen. And one other thing, I just wanted to thank all the TPRS guys, because, you know, Blaine Ray, who's the inventor of that, actually, he and his Craig Sheehy and Mike Coxon and Laurie Clark all came to Victoria to get us to train us even more. And so, you know, I have to say hats off to them too. So it
Yeah.
was great.
Well,
Yeah. So thank you for doing this, Stephen. I think it's wonderful, and I hope a lot of people learn from your journey this year.
I hope so too. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. All right.
Okay.
So thank you for tuning into that awesome conversation with my Aunt Martha. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I learned so much, and it's very encouraging and inspiring for me to have someone that close to me that I can look up to as a teacher. And I know I've been in her classroom and seen how successful her use of TPRS has been. I've had amazing conversations with her students, and it gets me so excited to just begin my own teaching and have my own class and use TPRS. So thanks for joining me today. Have a great day. Thanks.